Back at you once again, people. Thank you for joining us once again here on our YouTube channel at One Source. And if you haven't done so, please like us on our One Source fan page on Facebook. Subscribe to our channel. Still putting out some good things. Just to recap of what we've been speaking about, or what I've been talking about to you as of late on relationships. First video was basically speaking about love versus loving. How love is, we can look at it more of like a chemical reaction to a certain thing. It's not a noun. It doesn't describe a person, place, or thing, but it does allow us certain feelings and certain aspects within a relationship to feel a certain way. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it goes, sometimes it's just not there at all, and we just settle for the situation that we're in, or just settle for what is. As opposed to loving, where loving is a consistent thing. You're being loved and you're being loving, and as you're being loving, you're doing the things that portray a loving sense of the relationship. If you're being a loving husband, if you're let me rephrase that, if you're being a loving spouse, you're doing the things that reflect that love. And in a sense, you're going to have a loving relationship. And that's some of the things that I talked about in that video segment. And in the other, in the following video segment, we talked about the definition of relationship and what it is and why we need relationships. Therefore, the reason why we need a relationship is because, we want to be connected with something that's larger than us, or be accepted and be a part of something. And then that leads us to the definition of then what is a relationship. And I submitted that a relationship is a union of consciousness. We looked at it from a holistic point of view, that it's a union of mind, body, and spirit. And I took a point from Scripture that pretty much summed it up and gave us, some good, solid evidence of how a relationship is more of a holistic institution rather than let's say a man-made institution. Which leads us to another aspect within the relationship for this video segment of knowing, knowing who you are within the relationship, knowing the relationship itself, and knowing your spouse, knowing your significant other. I often tell the story about how I met my wife and how we came to be. You've heard many times before, love at first sight. No, it was love at first sight, and we fell in love. I was a skeptic at that, and I guess the Eternal, in His infinite wisdom and jokery, pulled a fast one on me. My former wife would always say about her current husband now that it was love at first sight. It was just felt soulmate. And for me, being the analytical person that I am, always looking at things from a scientific perspective, that if love at first sight exists, then the Eternal needs to show me, because I just don't believe in it. And I've heard stories and even met some people who that happened to, and it was something that they never really could describe. They really couldn't explain how they knew that person. They just knew, and they knew that she was the one, or he was the one, and I just knew it. And some have been together ever since. So the Eternal's joke on me was, meeting my current wife now, and like I said, I tell the story that we spoke on the phone the day before for almost 8 hours, and most people that know me know that I'm speaking on the phone for maybe about 15 minutes, and you're going to give me the who, what, why, when, where, and I'm going to reply back, and that's going to be it. But we spoke on the phone for 8 hours, 8.5 hours actually, until the dawn of the next day. And then the spirit within me said, "Hey, call her back, see if she wants to meet for coffee." So I did. And she said yes. And the day that we met at a public place. It was at a mall, and I'll never forget that. I saw her from across a crowd of people, and it's like I know her. It's like I knew her from a crowd of people, like having some long lost friend, pal, buddy from ages ago, and I knew her. And come to find out, she felt the same way. And we talked, we walked, and we were sitting in my car, and this whole feeling of loving was permeating in the air. And later on, we sat down and we had talked about it. And we're both analytical people, and we both look at things from a scientific perspective. But we never could explain how it was that we just met and we clicked, and it was as though we had known each other since the dawn of time, and it's a feeling that we could not explain, and we tried to analyze and look at it from 5 ways from Sunday, 6 ways from Saturday, 7 ways from the month of January, and we just couldn't. We just and we just kind of found it hard to accept that two rational people, two intelligent people, and two people who look at things analytically and scientifically could not explain how we knew one another. Now we go back to the Bible. We go to Genesis and we look at that word from the sense that most theologians and most pastors describe as an Adam knew Eve, or Adam knew his wife. Basically from that sense, and they conceived and bore a child, Cain, or bore a child Abel and Seth, and so forth and so on. And we hear that and see that as a theme throughout the Bible. But I will submit that we take a look at it from another perspective. That Adam knew his wife, just as I knew mine, and vice versa, and Eve knew Adam, and vice versa. And we take a look at that, and he said, this is now, go back to what I had mentioned before, as I explained the definition of relationship and what is a relationship, and looking at it from a holistic point of view. He looked at her and he said, this is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And the Eternal mentioned that, and said that it is for this reason. It's for the reason of relationship. Most people, well, there's marriage, there's marriage instituted in there. But it's the reason for the relationship, because he knew her the moment that he saw her. He knew that she was a part of him. Somehow, some way, because, as the story goes, the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he took a rib from his side and, fashioned a woman. And he presented this gift to man. And he looks at her and I know you. I don't know how I know you, but I know you. I know you are a part of me. But I don't know how, because I can't explain how. But I know that you are here. But I know that you are bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And as I said earlier, later on, as I explained, and you are spirit of my spirit. I know you. So as we go into relationship and knowing that person, we should also know who we are. And know who we are within that relationship. Because if we don't know who we are, and we don't know who we are inside the relationship, it opens the door for all sorts of things to happen, to permeate and come inside the relationship and take root in the relationship that it should not be. Give you an example. Now here they are. And here they are, and they're in the garden, and they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. They're tilling, they're working, flourishing, and prospering. And then all of a sudden, they're not together per se. And it leaves the door open for someone to come in and say, hey, put a little bug in the ear, or where's your husband? Or where's your wife? What's going on? Now, when we look at, again, and we just take a look at the story as it is a story, taken from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And say, well, in it, you become like God, knowing good and evil. Well, yeah, we know what's good for us. We know what's bad for us. Instead of, let's say, our parents teaching us and telling us, don't do this, don't do that, because they know what's good for us and what's bad for us. Now, if you have children, now you become like your parents, because now you know good and evil. So in essence, you've taken and bitten from the fruit of good and evil. So now you become thus like your parents. You know good and evil. You try to keep the evil things from your children as they are growing up. So you try to teach them good. Hence, hey, don't eat of that tree, because in the moment that you'll eat of it, you'll die. Not so much die in physical death, but you'll be separated from what I've taught you in my teachings for you. But that's a whole nother different story. But bringing it back around, or bringing it back into the context of the relationship, now we take a look at things because maybe things have flattened out. Things aren't the same as they used to be. For all intents and purposes, you know what? Honeymoon's over. The working of the relationship now begins. Or is now beginning. And now you're working, because the relationship is a living, breathing entity of its own. My father told me there's 3 parts to a relationship. There's you, there's your spouse, and then there's a relationship. And if we understand who we are within the relationship, then we'll understand how to cultivate and grow the relationship as it's supposed to be. Nurturing one another, pushing one another to do better, elevating one another to that better place that we all strive to be. So as we look at that scene, as we're in the garden, and we're looking at this fruit, it's tempting, it's pretty, it's beautiful, it's good, it's desirous. But my partner isn't with me. So we can't decide how it's beneficial for the relationship. But I look at it and I see, you know what, it's good for me. It's all right because it helps me, and if it's helping me, then it might help the relationship because it's just helping me. So I desire it instead of, how is it going to help him, or how is it going to help my better half? And thus, how is it going to help promote the relationship, better the relationship, and move us to the next level?